All right, everybody, welcome to Studio B. I am your host, Pastor MDH. Thank you very much for joining us here on the set today. Man, I got a lot to talk about. I've been gone for the last 2 weeks, going from here, there, everywhere. But I want to talk about two things today, man, and two things that are really, really important. I'm going to go off on a little bit of a diatribe. But first, before I get into that, make sure that you like, follow, comment, subscribe. Look right down there below, click that heart, click that share, so that you can get this information out to all of the masses of all things that are happening here on the set of Studio B. So I'm going to go into it right now. I'm just going to dive right into the 10 feet water. So I've went to California a couple weeks ago, and then from California we went into Birmingham. From Birmingham we went into, where do we go? We went to Montgomery, Alabama. From Montgomery we went to Selma. From Selma we went to Atlanta. From Atlanta we went to New Orleans. From New Orleans we went to Baton Rouge, and from Baton Rouge we came back home. We just took our young people on a civil rights tour. And I came from that tour, as I've done a couple of times before, but as I came from that tour, I've come back with a renewed focus on our people. And when I say our people, I mean African Americans. And just hear me out just for a second. It has furthered my resolve that Black people, we got to do better. We have got to do better. As you're going through these milestones in our history, and talking about the plight of African Americans here in the United States, especially, not talking about around the world, but from a perspective of the Western world, the United States of America. And our voyage here in 1619, maybe a little bit more than that or earlier than that, depending on who you trust in history. But taking 1619 as our arrival here in the Western world, we've come a long way, and our history has been riddled with struggle, bloodshed, people that understood the power and the purpose that was given to us and fought for that, even at the risk of losing their lives. We took 82 of our young people to the civil rights tour, and I told them this, that in 2 generations, the history of Black America will be lost. It will be gone. It will be gone. Our young people know nothing about our history. Zero, zilch, nada. They know nothing about our history. And as I was sharing with them, as a young boy comes to his bat mitzvah at 13 years old, that young Jewish boy has memorized the Torah, the first 5 books of the Old Testament. He has been taught about the Red Sea passage. He understands the history of the Jews and Holocaust. As he comes into his own at 13, he is enriched and entrenched in his own history. He knows it backwards and forwards. That's why he gets the rite of passage into manhood, as Jews will never, ever, ever allow the Holocaust to happen again, because they deeply entrench the history of their people into their people. When you're looking at the Japanese entrench their children and their generational children about the history of Nagasaki and Hiroshima. They understand the history of their people, and they make sure that their children understand the history of their people. When you're looking at Italians enrich their particular generation with the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. So they are making sure that their kids understand the history of their people, so that that history may never be repeated again. But our children, African American children, are quickly losing their history and their heritage because they have no clue and even no interest in understanding the deep roots of where they once came. And it is very troubling As you go to these particular places, as we went to Birmingham and we went to the 16th Street Baptist Church where the 4 little girls lost their lives when the church was bombed. We went right across the street to Kelly Ingram Park, and we talked about the 5,000 kid walkout from school and how 2,500 of them got arrested. And the next day after they got released, they went right back and they began to start marching. And I'm talking about 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old kids walked out of school because of segregation, because they wanted to be taught on an equal plane. And so we're coming from that in 1960, where they understood the value of education, to now in 2022, where more than 50% of our African-American boys are dropping out of high school. So we were once at a point to where we had to fight for the right for equal education. But now that we have equal education, we're dropping out of school and paying no regards to education. When you look at the history of our people and the history of our struggle to get us to where we are right now, I feel in my heart that African Americans here in America are regressing, not progressing. And we're not regressing because of what white people are doing to us. We are not going backwards because of what the man is doing to us or what the system is doing to us. No, we are regressing because of what we are doing to us. If you look at African American culture, the black culture here in the United States of America, and again, I'm chiseling out the United States, the Western world. If the black culture was a country, we'd be the 17th richest nation on the planet. That's how much money that the African American or the black culture has within it. It's not because of what the white man is doing. It's not because of systematic issues over here. And we can talk about stuff like that still lingers from those days. But it's not those things that are taking us back 30, 40, 50, 100 years. It's us. I mean, I want you to look at our culture and what we celebrate. As African Americans, as black people, what we celebrate, what we give high fives and kudos to, what we reward people for, the behavior that we reward people for as African Americans. We are the only culture that celebrates violence and degradation. Like, we get people that talk about things that are antithetical to the survival of our people, and yet we give them awards. We give them big contracts. We give them large amounts of money when what they are talking about and what they represent destroy our very communities. But we celebrate it. We celebrate black criminality, but we don't celebrate black scholarship. We talk about and we get to the hills and would lift up people who talk about the worst of life, but then we downplay people who are doing the best in life. And when you look at what our forefathers and our foremothers went through for us to be here in 2022 and not be taking giant steps forward is ridiculous. But we're living in a time right now to where we as black people want to blame everybody else for our plight and never want to turn the attention on where it really belongs. Personal decisions that are made by individuals that affect their lives. Nothing to do with anybody else. So when I'm going through this and talking to the kids, I love history. If you've been watching this channel for any length of time, you know I love history. I love history. Ecclesiastes chapter number 3 says that there's nothing new under the sun. What has happened will happen again. I love history. I love finding out about the meat and potatoes, about how things came to pass, right? So I love that. And when I'm talking about our history, it is so immersed in the richness of what our people have gone through and what they've overcome. But as I'm going through this particular civil rights tour with 82 of our young people, and we go to Birmingham and we talk about the 16th Street Baptist bombing. We talk about Kelly Ingram. We talk about Schulenburg. We talk about those people, Schutzberg, excuse me. We talk about those people who made dramatic impacts on the right for civil rights, on the fight for civil rights. And then we go to a place like Birmingham, Alabama, We'll go to Birmingham, Alabama, where Dexter Street Baptist Church was, which is the first church that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. pastored at the age of 24 years old. He pastored it for 6 years. And little did I know, I understood about Dexter Baptist Street Church, but I didn't know where it was centrally located in regards to the proximity of Montgomery, Alabama. If you step out on the porch of Dexter Street Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama, and look to your right, less than 300 yards away is the state capitol. This huge white building, the epicenter of all the politics in Alabama, right there next to Dexter Street Baptist Church. And on December the 2nd, 1955 is when Dr. Martin Luther King began to organize this march and this protest to boycott the bus systems of his day because of this wonderful woman named Rosa Parks. And he was able to do that even with the Capitol in his rearview mirror, no doubt understanding the powers that he was getting ready to ruffle, but still did it with a sense of courage. We left there, we go to Selma, Alabama, go over to Selma Street Bridge, where they were getting ready to march from Selma all the way back to Montgomery, which is 47 miles, by the way. And they met on the other side of the bridge by the Alabama State Troopers. And what happens is Bloody Sunday. But these were people that were not protesting with saggy pants, and they wasn't protesting with bats, and they wasn't breaking windows, and they wasn't burning down people's homes, and they were not there with fists pumped in the air talking about black power this, black power that. They were in their suits. They were marching peacefully for the right to vote, because they understood the power of the vote. They understood that when we get into particular positions, we can change the demographic if we know what change needs to be done. This is the history of our people. We leave there, we go to Atlanta, and we visit the King Center, and we go over to the King Memorial, and we're looking at all of this Ebenezer Baptist Church. And as I'm telling the kids, I want you to look at the struggle that happened for you to be here. You are without excuse. If you're doing nothing in life, that ain't the fault of nobody else. We are sitting here talking about free Brittany Griner. For what? For what? That's the moniker that we want to sit up there and hold up. Free Brittany. She shouldn't be serving 9 years in Russia for marijuana. And not every black person talking about this because she's black. No, it's because she went over to Russia and broke their laws. But we don't talk about Alexander White, the young man that just graduated at 13 years old and getting ready to go to Stanford on an academic scholarship. We're talking about free Brittany because we celebrate the degradation of our race. And it's ridiculous, quite frankly. And pardon the passion, but if your life is not what you want it to be, the person most responsible for that life is the one living that life, and that's you. But see, our forefathers, our foremothers understood what was at stake. I've often shared with you that in 1960, we had a 21% out of wedlock birth rate in the African American community. In 1960, at the height of Jim Crow, segregation, the Civil Rights passage had not passed, the Voting Rights Bill had not passed. We are in Jim Crow segregated South, and we have people in the North that wasn't so nice either. At the epicenter of it, we got 21%. Now that we got the Civil Rights passage, now that we got the Voting Rights Bill of 1965, now those things are in stone. In 2022, we have a 74% birth rate, out of wedlock birth rate in the African American community. 74, with all of the freedoms that we enjoy. Under segregated law, we were at 21%. In 1960, 60% of African American families owned homes. 68% of families in 1961 at the height of Jim Crow had a mother and father in the home. But here we are in 2022, and 3 out of 4 births in the African American community are to out of wedlock mothers with no father in the picture. And out of that 74%, 61% of that 74% will not know their father in their primitive years of growing up. This is at the height where we have had a black president, where we got black mayors, we got black police chief, we got black congressmen. We have been opened up to education, financial advantage. We got all the things that we have been fighting for. And yet look at us as we continue to trend down. It's a sad case that we are in a place right now to where we are not holding ourselves accountable. Listen, I told you, grown people don't watch BET. BET does not stand for Black Entertainment Television. It stands for Black Elimination Television or Black Exploitation Television. BET is the armpit of our culture. It's horrid. And if you look at the BET Awards and unfortunately, even as the Stellar Awards that went on a couple of days ago were Christians, but you can't tell the difference between a Christian and a non-Christian now. They look the same, they dress the same, they talk the same, everything is the same. But we celebrate this as a people. Like, we don't celebrate the good. And this is an agenda. This is a purposeful plan to self-destruct from within. Mark chapter 3, verse number 27, that no man can come into a man's house and plunder his goods unless he first binds the strong man. If you go up to verse number 24, it says, no kingdom that is divided against itself shall stand. One of the ways that you destroy any culture, any society, any nation is not from outside forces. It's from within. You got to first infiltrate and then you got to divide. That's what's happening with our culture right now. It's because we celebrate all that is evil and we don't applaud that which is good. Coming off of this civil rights tour, and you're looking at the rich history of where people marched when they knew what was going to happen. And we're often reminded of the young lady when Martin Luther King organized the Montgomery City bus boycott. As him and a couple of associates were driving down to a particular event, they noticed that this older elderly lady was walking. It was in the dead of summer. And remember, that boycott went on for a little over a year, causing great economic strain on the city of Montgomery. Martin Luther King pulls up beside of this elderly lady as she is walking in the dead of summer in blistering heat and offers her a ride to wherever she's going. And she says, baby, with all due respect, I'm not walking for me. I'm walking for my grandkids. She was walking for something greater than herself. She was participating in the Montgomery boycotts, but she wasn't walking for herself. She was walking for her kids and her grandkids. She was walking for a purpose that was bigger than her because she understood the big picture. And as you're looking at what it took for us to get to the place that where we are right now, we owe our people a debt. And I was sharing with a couple of adults who were the chaperones on that trip. That's why if you've ever noticed since 1968 when Martin Luther King was assassinated, there's never been another voice besides Martin Luther King. When they snuffed the voice of Dr. King, they snuffed the voice of a people. And I understand that there had a lot of different stuff going on, but I want you to hear what I'm saying here. No other voice has risen up from the ashes of Dr. King. What other voice is on the horizon that speaks for the masses? And if you look at his last speech, his last sermon, if you will, When Martin Luther King was preaching, Martin Luther King was talking about every black person that was in that church, and that broadcast went out across the world. He said this to black people. He said, stop going to Coca-Cola. Stop spending your money with Coca-Cola. Stop spending your money with Wonder Bread. Take your money out of these white banks and put it into the Tri-State Bank, which was a black-owned bank in the city of Montgomery. Martin Luther King, before he died, the last sermon that he preached was talking about economic empowerment for his people. And he says this, I've been to the mountaintop. He said, I may not get there with you, but I've seen the glory of the Lord. The next day, he breathes his last because he was assassinated in the Lauren Hotel in Memphis, Tennessee. So here we are standing on the backside of that. Standing on the backside of a man that was used by God not to just galvanize his people, African-American people, but Martin Luther King was such a purveyor of his time that he was able to organize all people for the common good of all people. And here we are, we have that as our background. We have people like Medgar Evers. We have people like Malcolm X. We have people who spoke for the galvanization of our people. And here we are, 50, 60 years later, digressing in truth. And by digressing, we are blaming everybody else except the one that needs to be blamed. You guys will lose your mind if a white person kills a black person. You will lose your mind, burn down the nation if a white cop shoots a black man. But you won't say nothing when a black person kills another black person. You won't say nothing when an 8-year-old baby gets caught in the crossfire of a drive-by shooting perpetrated by another black man against another black man. Crickets. Oh, but let a white man do something to the black man. Oh, let him even be a criminal. And you will take up arms and scream Black Lives Matter to the hilt, but won't say nothing about the 30 million black babies that have been aborted in the womb since 1973. But let a white man do something. And we're pointing the finger over here, pointing the finger over there. Let a black man go to jail. Forget what he did. Let him go to jail. Systematic racism. See, they want black people in jail, but won't hold them accountable for selling drugs on the corner. This is where we are at right now. And this civil rights tour, again, if you've never had the opportunity to take one, you and your family, you need to visit Birmingham. You need to visit Montgomery. You need to visit Selma. You need to go and visit these places. Memphis, Tennessee, the Lorraine Hotel. You need to visit these places so that you can get a renewed perspective on life. This is important stuff, y'all. In the same 16th Street Baptist Church, which many people don't know this, Martin Luther King was assassinated in 1968 is when he breathed his last, when he was shot on the balcony of the Lorraine Hotel. By the way, the Lorraine Hotel is exactly in the same position, cars parked outside, cigarettes still in the ashtray, unfolded sheets on the bed, as it was the day that Martin Luther King left that particular hotel. He was assassinated in 1968. In 1974, little known history that we don't know about, in 1974, his mother was assassinated at 16th Street Baptist Church while playing the organ at church. And you know who she was assassinated by? She was assassinated by a black man who just recently converted to being a black Hebrew. Yeah, a black man shot and killed Dr. Martin Luther King's mother while she was playing the organ at church. Yeah, I want you to think about that. A black man killed Dr. Martin Luther King's mom, shot her in the head, and shot 2 other deacons that same day as well. When I going through this and we're looking at all of this history and what people have done for us to get to the place to where we are, we owe our people a debt. Nobody, please hear me, is responsible for your life except for you. You are responsible. You are the reason you are where you are right now. And if you don't get that to the degree of how it needs to sink in and permeate in your being, you'll always be one of these ones that are pointing the finger at everybody else. Black people, we got to do better. We just got to do better. I'm not going to celebrate criminals. I'm not going to celebrate criminals. I'm not. I've told y'all before, George Floyd does not define the black experience. Y'all may get mad at that. Y'all may do this and do that. But George Floyd does not deserve a monument in nobody's capital, at nobody's city hall. He don't deserve a bronze statue nowhere. When there's people out here that are moving the needle for the overall progression of the entire people, those people don't get statues. And while that was tragic, and I agree that the fool, the racist Derek Chauvin needed every ounce of the 30 years that he got, plus the violation of his civil rights and every other officer that was involved in that Minnesota tragedy, that particular man, that particular instance does not define the black experience, especially considering what our forefathers went through. We got to do better. We got to demand that we do better. We got to demand that we lift the standard and do better. Civil Rights Tour, which was absolutely amazing. So again, if you have not been there, if you've never done a civil rights tour, don't understand the history of our people, you need to understand the sacrifices that were made for you to be in the position that you're currently in. So everybody, I want to thank you, man. I haven't been in the studio for a couple weeks, but we're back. I got my feet on the ground for at least 3 weeks before we got to push the reset button here in September and get back to the grind. But everybody remember, with God, all things are possible. You can do exceedingly abundantly above your present circumstances, wherever you may be in life. Listen, there is light at the end of the tunnel. God is with you. And if God be for you, it's more than the entire world against you. You can do it with God's help. So everybody, thank you for joining us here on the set of Studio B. Remember, like, follow, comment, share this podcast to all of those in your circle. We'll be going a couple of interesting things that we'll have coming up here in the next couple of weeks. So make sure that you stay tuned. Remember, be empowered, be informed. Studio B.